Sure, we all know about Eddie Brock and Cletus Cassidy, but what about other hosts of the Venom and Carnage symbiotes? In fact, what about other hosts of, well, just other symbiotes? Welcome back, Nerd Squad. It's me, Amanda McKnight, aka VampX13, but you can call me Vampy. Join me today as we count down the top 10 symbiote hosts you forgot about. Which symbiote is your favorite? Let me know in the comments. Number 10, Gwen Stacy. When most people think of Venom, they don't even think of Gwen Stacy. After all, in the comics, Gwen has been dead for years at this point, if we're talking main continuity. But I'm not talking about main reality Gwen, I'm talking about the Gwen Stacy who is alive and well, and who many of us know as the hero Spider-Gwen or Ghost Spider. For a time, Gwen was without her powers, and it was then that she became bonded to Venom in an attempt to recover said powers temporarily. Gwen was hesitant to bond with the Earth-65 version of Venom, which actually gets its origin from venomous spider aliens in this universe, if you can believe that. This is because the solution to get her powers back through Venom was actually offered to her initially by her enemy, Matt Murdock. Yeah, in this reality, Matt's not the hero Daredevil, but instead is the villain known as Kingpin. Dun dun dun. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, and if you love it when we talk about symbiotes, be sure to let us know by giving this video a like. Number 9, Lee Price. I wish I could forget about Lee Price, probably the worst symbiote host around, but I'm sorry, I gotta remind you of the fact that this happened. By the way, if you, as I guess, may have forgotten about this host, well, I'm sorry. Lee Price was an evil dude who was probably one of the meanest and cruelest symbiote hosts Venom ever had. Lee Price used the symbiote for evil and also tormented it, making it question its own alignment, and afterward making Venom believe that it perhaps was just inherently evil due to Lee Price's actions while bonded with the symbiote. Price also emotionally mistreated the symbiote, so it was in pain during its time with Price, constantly living in fear of its own host, and afterward, when its time bonded with Price had ended and he had left his mark on Venom's consciousness. I know Venom hasn't always been the nicest being around, but not even Venom honestly deserved Lee Price. Number 8, Miss Marvel. This is a wild one that I even forgot about until I dug deep back into my comic book memory while putting together this list for you all. For this point, we're focusing on not Kamala Khan's Miss Marvel or the more obscure Sharon Ventura's Miss Marvel if you prefer. We are focusing on when Carol Danvers was known by the name of Miss Marvel. During Siege, she ended up forcibly bonded to the Venom symbiote. Now, this happened as a result of Carol attempting to separate Venom from its current host at the time, Mac Gargan, because this was also during Dark Reign. She pulled Mac out of the suit, only to find herself then, well, bonded to it. Venom seemed thrilled by this development, enjoying the immense power of their newfound host. However, Venom's good time as She-Venom Carol was cut short by Spider-Man, who intervened and saved Carol from Venom's influence. Thank goodness. Although that hair, I do love that hair that Venom got when he was bonded with Miss Marvel. Number 7, The Thing. The Thing ended up being bonded to Carnage when Carnage overtook the town of Doverton, Colorado. Ben Grimm was one of the new Avengers who was called in to help deal with the situation, and as soon as issue number 1 of this series, which centered around the story of Carnage's invasion of the town known as Carnage USA, Grimm was overtaken by Carnage and forcefully bonded to the symbiote. He would end up getting free before the series ended, of course, and would help in the fight against Carnage as the heroes tried to regain control of the town, but it was still a pretty surprising turn of events, and it's often something we forget about because it happened only in that one series and only pretty briefly. The fact that The Thing was once a part of Carnage, that's pretty wild. Number 6, Captain America. Now, if you think Ben Grimm becoming bonded to the Carnage symbiote is shocking, wait till you hear this story. Not only was Ben Grimm there when this happened, but there was a whole team brought in to deal with Carnage taking over the town. This team was led by Captain America and also included Hawkeye, Spider-Man, and Wolverine. And almost the whole superhero response team here ended up infected by the Carnage symbiote, except for Spider-Man. Yep, that includes Steve Rogers' Captain America. At one point though, Cap is able to break free from Carnage's control when Carnage attempts to use his influence to will Captain America to harm innocents. However, even then, it's shown to be extremely difficult for Cap to break free of Carnage's will, even for a few moments. Number 5, Tanis Nieves. Tanis Nieves was a symbiote host who I actually really enjoyed, and yet, alas, we'll likely never get to see her again as a host since well, she's dead and she's gone. Really unfortunate too, because I actually thought she was among the most interesting of symbiote-related characters. Tanis was Shriek's psychiatrist, and a brief host of Carnage who basically used her as a ride to get to Cletus, but that's not what we're focusing on here. Because Carnage left Tanis with a little gift after leaving her, its child who lived in her prosthetic arm. As a result, when she ended up as the reluctant hero Scorn, Tanis had a connection to technology, which made her unique among other symbiotes and their hosts. She could communicate with and bond with tech. Number 4, Alejandra Jones. Alejandra Jones, or Ghost Rider, is honestly someone I love in the comics. I especially love her as Ghost Rider. I feel like she's so underrated. Though tragically, I also feel like we never really saw enough done with her as Ghost Rider or just in general. She was hunted down during Absolute Carnage for being a symbiote host, or for having been one anyway, and this came as a shock to her and to us, because while Carnage may have been right, we never really even got to enjoy her in the role of a symbiote host. People were like, wait, what? In fact, she was only targeted because she'd been considered a host sort of second hand through the Spirit of Vengeance. At one point, the Venom symbiote had basically been bonded to the Spirit of Vengeance, and as a result, through the spirit, it had passed on traces of the Venom symbiote to Alejandra, which are known as a codex. If you know Absolute Carnage, you know where I'm going with this. As a result of her somewhat distant connection to Venom, Alejandra was hunted down as a former host by Carnage, who sought her codex, which of course was located in her spine. So I think you know how that went for her. It didn't go so well, and now she's gone. Number 3, Cassandra Nova. This one was a fun surprise for me to read about. I mean, I read it when it happened, so I knew, and I never really forgot, but I have to imagine that the second volume of Marauders was somewhat of a mixed bag for most people out there and wasn't that popular. It was very different from the first volume, with a totally different creative team behind it and a whole new roster for the superhero team itself. Although to be honest, I enjoyed it, but it was very different. Especially surprising was the inclusion of the villain Cassandra Nova on said team. But even weirder was when they all went to space on a mission to track down and rescue the first ever mutants, and during said mission came across a symbiote, one that Cassandra ended up bonding with. Eventually, I believe they went their separate ways, but that whole subplot was honestly a pretty wild ride. It also makes Cassandra Nova, who's already terrifying, even more terrifying. Number 2, Mary Jane. Mary Jane is an even more unlikely symbiote host than Gwen when it comes to, those that you would think or wouldn't think of when it comes to symbiotes. That's because Mary Jane has literally been terrorized by the Venom symbiote before. In fact, of all Spider-Man villains in the main continuity, MJ seems to be the most frightened by Venom. She even begged Peter not to wear his black suit because it reminded her too much of the villain. So why in the world would she ever bond with a symbiote? Well, once again, this is an alternate reality MJ. This MJ is also from Earth 65, and in this reality, for a little while, she was bonded to the Carnage symbiote, if you can believe that. So different. I don't think we'd ever see MJ do that on Earth 616, but you never know, actually. Maybe it would happen. It'd be crazy if it happened. Number 1, Dinosaur. Initially, the venomized T-Rex that we saw in Old Man Logan was kind of just a background character, really given no explanation whatsoever for how and why it existed. We can assume that the Savage Land is involved, but that's about it. Fortunately, later on, when we return to the alternate future of Old Man Logan in the Old Man Hawkeye series, which is actually I think set a little bit before Old Man Logan, we finally got a bit more context for how exactly this venomized T-Rex came to be, and then later shows up in Old Man Logan. It turns out that Clint accidentally brought the symbiote and Tyrannosaurus Rex together in order to save people that Kate Bishop was protecting in the wastelands. He drives off a Venom invasion by getting them to chase him out into the desert. His hope is to find dinosaurs which were moved to the desert from the Savage Lands, hoping they will deal with, Venom. And while this seems to be what happens in Hawkeye's comic, we know because of the events of Old Man Logan that the T-Rex Hawkeye manages to summon here doesn't actually defeat Venom, but likely instead just bonds with it. Or at least it's the catalyst for Venom becoming bonded to, maybe some other T-Rex in the future by the time we see it again. That's about it. Until next time, you stay nerdy, YouTube.